As twilight draped its velvet shroud over Florence, a gentle hum of activity whispered through the cobblestone streets like an evening lullaby promising respite from day's bustling fervor. Inside one quiet corner house, with ivy creeping up aged stone walls, stood Leonardo da Vinci's workshop, or place where genius breathed and dreamt amidst tools that were both instruments of creation and harbingers of conflict in the hands of ambitious men like Lorenzo de' Medici, Duke of Urbino. Amid this realm of ceaseless creativity was a young apprentice named Matteo, name as delicate to pronounce, as it is rare for someone so learned and skilled at his craft in the workshop's bustling atmosphere. His master, Leonardo himself, had taken him under wing not just because of youthful curiosity, but also due to a shared yearning to shape futures beyond their own, a future that sometimes seemed as malleable as wax, yet so often threatened by war's unpredictable tempests. Matteo's latest task was one he approached with mixed emotions. The workshop buzzed around him, a hive of artistry and invention where paints met canvas to capture beauty, while charcoal kisses woodcut designs that spoke only of death. Here were Leonardo's hands at play sketching anatomy studies, so detailed they seemed alive under his fingertips as he traced muscles, sinews, and the very essence of being back onto parchment with a patience born from endless fascination for nature's secrets. The air was heavy with oil paint's rich, center-heady perfume that danced upon Matteo's nostrils as he moved through his masterpiece, the war machine taking shape before him. His task, to design a contraction of such intricacy and deadly efficiency for Duke Ludovico Gonzaga, who sought dominion over rival states with an iron will but not always discerning judgment or stark contradiction that weighed upon Matteo's spirit like the heft of lead. Leonardo's genius, though boundless in art and science, was also steeped in understanding humanity at its most conflicted, a reflection on how peaceful Florence could be so far removed from savage warfare conducted by mercenaries known as condottieri, who plied their trade with the blood of countless souls. The apprentice's heart ached, for he understood too well that his work in creating such instruments was an enabler means to a grim end wrapped up neatly within iron and gunpowder's promise of power and conquest. As night began its creeping advance upon Florence, with the first stars peeking through retreating clouds, Matteo stood back from his latest creation for Duke Ludovico's icer metal beast born to wage war, without human hands guiding it directly, onto battlefields strewn across Italy. It was a machine born of genius, yet fated as an agent of sorrow and pain. The apprentice envisioned himself one day standing on such fields, perhaps unwillingly heralding its thunderous arrival upon unknowing men to face their demiser future he could not endorse. And there in that moment, heavy with contemplation, under a canopy of flickering candlelight and the gentle caress of brushstrokes on parchment, Matteo felt an acute awareness of his place within this world, or man born into creation yet troubled by its darker creations. Leonardo observed him with knowing eyes that seemed to pierce beyond sight and time. Wisdom woven through the threads of age and experience had taught him much about humanity's dual capacity for both unparalleled beauty in artistic expression and devastating cruelty upon its battlefields, a lesson he imparted silently as Matteo worked, perhaps hoping that one day his apprentice would find solace amidst the dichotomy of life's work. The night pressed onward with silent promises to all within Florence's embrace. Dreamers and tyrants alike lay their hopes upon its gentle bosom as it cradled them into slumberous city, where art saw immortality, while war pursued a fleeting victory, both enigmas that young Matteo must navigate in the days to come. Tonight's workshop closed with Leonardo affirming his belief. True power lay not within iron and might, but rather in fostering peace. Through in Chapter 2 of Matteo's tale, Within Florence's Embrace, he found himself at a crossroads where history and art melded into his soul as if by magic under Leonardo da Vinci's tutelage or guidance, not just in technique, but also understanding the human condition. As dawn approached with promises of light, yet another day would unfold before him. Matteo took to sketching a vision that had taken root within his mind during last night's vigils at Florence's heart. It was on these early morning hours that he found solace in nature. The city buzzed awake with life beyond art, and war life as simple yet complex as any other being, seeking its place under sunlight just like him. The sketches began to flow from Matteo's hand effortlessly once again, a serene river where children played on its banks untouched by the horror of battlefields, an ancient oak tree standing tall and proud in a meadow that held secrets older than any war testament to nature's indomitable spirit. Leonardo watched as Matteo immortalized these moments with his pen, each stroke carrying weight yet danced lightly like whispers of life itself on the parchment before him. The master painter's eyes twinkled not just in mirth, but also wisdom. He knew well that to honor one's craft meant capturing more than mere beauty. It was about telling stories, echoing truths wherein lay both pain and joy intertwined within humanity's endless tapestry. As Matteo continued his work, the gentle hum of Florence outside seemed worlds away. Here, in Leonardo's atelier, time folded upon itself like origami swans that took flight only to settle back into their paper embrace after mere minutes had passed since they were first crafted. Together with Matteo's apprentice hands and the master's experienced ones, a painting began its slow ascent onto canvas or triptych of life, where one side held Florence at daybreak, full of vibrant colors that captured souls in their morning routines, bakers rolling dough to form delicate pastries for an upcoming festival, and fishermen casting lines into the Tuscan seas, hoping for a generous catch. The second panel revealed a panoramic view wherein Matteo's rendering of Florence at high noon, a golden orb hanging in its zenith, as if to oversee all activities with benevolent scrutiny. The city bustled under an azure sky, and here was Leonardo offering quiet words that spoke volumes without uttering a sound. Observe life's daily dance. The sunbeams touch each face like gentle hands of time. The last panel depicted twilight in Florence, their tender orange hue casting its spell over the city as shadows grew long and whispered secrets to those willing to listen. Children's laughter mingled with mothers' soothing lullabies, while old couples held hands tightly against their palms warmed by each other. It was during this time that Leonardo imparted his final piece of wisdom. Art is not just about what we see, but also the feelings and stories unseen. As night approached once again with a softening touch, it seemed as if Florence itself lulled into sleep. Its Kabbalists lay quiet under starlit skies, while dreamers wrapped their minds around tales that Leonardo had painted for them. Matteo found himself reflecting on the day's work. Peaceful riverside children and twilight-kissed lovers were more than scenes of nature. They encapsulated moments where beauty transcended beyond its aesthetic form, becoming vessels carrying Leonardo's silent teachings across time. With each scene that Matteo captured upon his canvas came the realization's true essence of art lay not in replication, but interpretation and understanding. To see was one thing, yet to feel it within oneself through another's eyes allowed for a connection much deeper than any seen before, an empathy born from shared human experiences across generations. As he prepared his tools and cleaned the remnants of paint that adorned brushes heavy with stories untold, Matteo felt gratitude towards Leonardo not just for mastering artistry, but also embracing its role in weaving threads between souls across time's expansive loom. He aspired to touch hearts and minds through his work as surely as the brush had touched parchment under guidance, hoping that one day he too could become a conduit for within the humble abode that housed Matteo's easel and oils. A quiet contemplation unfolded as night's embrace began to envelop Florence once more. The city had always been alive with tales woven into every brick and cobblestone. Now, in his solitude, he found himself listening intently for its whispers that only grew louder under the moonlight's tender gaze, a reminder of the day spent capturing ethereal moments on canvas. Matteo sank deeper into thought as memories played out like silent films before his eyes. Children, their laughter still resonant in the air. Lovers entwined under a sky painted with hues that mirrored wine and sunset alike, the very essence of life's simple pleasures. He often wondered if Leonardo himself could have glimpsed into Matteo's soul, finding therein an echoing sentiment for the interconnectedness he so passionately sought to portray through his artistry. The twilight hours stretched out before him as a canvas of infinite possibility, where every brushstroke was both question and answer, a dialogue between Matteo's hand, Leonardo's spirit, and now the very heartbeat of Florence itself that seemed to resonate with his new-found understanding. As he dipped into another palette, mixing blues for midnight sky or earthy browns tinged with gold from sunsets past, Matteo allowed himself moments lost in reverie, time traveler traversing the annals of history through strokes and hues that spoke louder than words. The layers upon his canvas seemed to thicken as he delved deeper into this temporal dance between then and now, each layer a testament not just to what was seen, but felt in its rawest form an empathy transcending time's veil imbued within oil pigment. Amidst his work that night, the echo of Leonardo's teachings whispered through Matteo's mind, "Art is never finished, only abandoned." These words seemed to ripple across centuries, and settle in his spirit with a gentle resolve that perhaps perfection lay not within the final piece, but its journey. His hands, guided by an unseen muse of sorts, traced lines that held stories yet untold or understood as Matteo sought new depths beneath each depiction's surface. He found himself painting not to replicate what was before him, but interpret it through his own essence interlaced with the observer's lens. The city of Florence, bathed in moonlight and shadowed by history, watched over Matteo as one does an artist who dares to dream deeply within silent dialogues wrought between light and dark dance that birthed art itself, a communion where each soul bore witness not only with their eyes, but heartstrings vibrating at the resonance of shared humanity. As he worked, Matteo came upon portraitesque paintings left by Leonardo's own hand, women gazing outward as if to him a mirror held up against time's face wherein lay reflections not just of beauty but souls yearning for expression through the conduit that was art. The sitter in each portrait, though from a different era and life story entirely, seemed connected by an unspoken thread woven with Matteo's own aspirations or connection fostered between observer and depicted across lifetimes immemorial yet felt as if within arm's reach of the present. Matteo found himself not merely painting, but participating in a cycle that Leonardo had set forth, an eternal continuum where art served both to preserve fleeting moments on canvas while simultaneously allowing them passage into memory and a motion or vessel for shared experiences across generations transcending physical existence itself. It was as if each stroke of his brush could bridge the gap between then and now, a silent thread linking Matteo's essence with every person who had ever felt love or loss within these storied walls. He sought to pour into them an immortal echo that would resonate for eternity. The night waned as dawn's first light threatened the edges of his dream-infused reality, a reminder that while one chapter concluded in sleep's realm, another awaited beyond Florence's awakening horizon. It was time to fold away Matteo and Leonardo within their respective epochs once more. Yet, as he packed up brushes heavy with tales untold, the city itself seemed to nod her silent acknowledgment of a night spent in communion, where art damned the first tendrils of dawn crept through the parted curtains, as Matteo carefully arranged his brushes, each one a vessel for stories, untold and emotions unfelt by those who would eventually gaze upon them in silent reverence. The night had been an odyssey. With every stroke he laid down on canvas, not only did the colors weave themselves into scenes of ethereal beauty, but also encapsulated the very essence of humanity's deepest yearnings and sorrows or connection as profoundly personal to Matteo as it was universally understood. It had been a journey through time itself, with Leonardo's spirit lingering in his periphery like an unseen guide whispering secrets from ages past into the ear of present-day creativity. As he stepped back to behold his nocturnal masterpiece, a delicate interplay of shadows and light that spoke louder than words ever could, Matteo knew it was time for him to retreat beyond Florence's embrace before this night turned into day. With the first blushes of morning threatening his dream-infused reality at its edges, he gathered his belongings with a heavy heart and mind that had transcended temporal boundaries within these storied walls. He was an artist no longer confined by time, but forever linked to it through pigment and passion, or custodian for the emotional layers of history etched in oil on linen. As he passed from room to chamber, his footsteps seemed not so much a signal that night had come full circle as an echo resonating with Leonardo's own presence, who once walked these same streets and contemplated masterpieces under moonlit skies now long past their prime. The air was thick with the scent of linseed oil mixed on cold mornings, where Matteo felt less a man returning to his bedroom closet, but more as if he were stepping back into an age when art and life danced hand in hand under stolid Italian skis, an eternal ballet choreographed by the soul of creativity. Once inside the solitude of Matteo's room, a space where once young ambition had first kissed his heart with wonderment for beauty's language through art, he paused to glance at an easel that held not only what Leonardo might have painted, but also reflections of himself for mistake of aspirations shared between two souls separated by centuries yet united in purpose and devotion. The canvas before him was no longer blank. It had been alive with Matteo's brush as he traced lines that spiraled into infinity, capturing not only the beauty but also encapsulating a whisper of life's tender fragility or fleeting moment, where joy and despair danced in delicate balance. The depicted scenes held stories. Each character portrayed was imbued with dreams so palpable that onlookers might find themselves tracing their own histories through the visages before them, as though Matteo had unearthly insight into humanity's ceaseless quest for meaning. He painted not just to please an eye or stroke a canvas, but rather with each pigment poured, and every line drawn he was pouring his very soul, a vessel of empathy that transcended the physical realm, carrying whispers from one heartbeat's past into another's present. The connection between observer and depicted across lifetimes immemorial felt as if it could be touched upon canvas. Therein lay Matteo's true and devoto bind souls with a thread spun of shared human experiences, allowing them to resonate through generations beyond his own mortal span. As he continued this nightly ritual in the quiet company of Florence's oldest secrets and silent wisdom imparted by those who came before him like spectral patrons, invisible yet ever present, Matteo found comfort not only in completing art that would outlive its creator, but also knowing his legacy might just be a whisper among countless others. The city itself seemed to acknowledge this communion of spirit as it nodded with the gentle grace befitting an ancient musette's silent affirmation for Matteo's nocturnal odyssey through time and soul, where art served not merely in preservation, but also offered passage into memory. As he folded away his brushes heavy with tales untold, it was clear that this night would be a chapter immortalized within Florence's own story history, a testament to the transcendent power of creativity across all eons, where Matteo had found, as Matteo's brush stilled against his palette of earthy ochres and tender sienna, he glanced across at a canvas that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat, or visage captured not by mere sight of the spirit's gaze. It was in this moment before dawn had claimed her last gleam from Florence's skyline when Matteo envisioned his next creation, one inspired by an ancient tale of love lost and found across realms, both earthly and ethereal, a story as old as time itself, that whispered to him through generations. The image he sought would be no ordinary portrait. It was the embodiment of a soul's journey beyond death's veil, brought forth in hues seldom seen by mortal eyes, but felt deeply within their core. With reverence for his predecessors and an unspoken pact to honor Florence, that city that had cradled countless stories since the dawn of art itself, Matteo set upon this night's work with a delicate hand. His brush danced in silence, guided by whispers from beyond life's final curtain, as he painted not what was, but rather felt through to be, an echo across ages, where once familiar faces transformed into something more profound, a connection between souls that spanned lifetimes and realms. On the 5th evening of this month, under a crescent moon's shy glow filtering in through his studio's low window pane, Matteo found himself revisiting an old legend passed down by Florentine bards, or tale where two lovers parted but never truly lost their bond. Through trials of time and tribulations across dimensions, they remained each other's unwavering beacon, guided always homeward no matter the distance or darkness that lay between them. Matteo's brush flowed over canvas with tender strokes as he sought to capture this eternal yearning, or testament not just of love, but also faith in a connection so potent it defied all boundaries and transcended death itself. His hand moved slowly, deliberately. Each touch upon the linen felt like an act of communion between artist, artwork, and audience alike, as if he was channeling something greater than himself, silent music that plays eternally within every heartbeat's echo through time. As hours melted into one another and shadows grew long against the sunlit walls encasing his creative sanctum, Matteo found solace in knowing that this work might not only serve as a visual feast, but also an invitation to commune with souls of yore, a bridge across time where art became both destination and journey. It was here, within these hallowed chambers lined by the wisdom etched upon every brushstroke left before him, he felt most at peace. His hands no longer just instruments for creating beauty, but also vessels carrying forth a legacy that could touch souls beyond this temporal plane. And as Matteo laid down his brushes and gazed back over what was born of night's quiet embrace, or portrait where love lived on, agelessly entwined with the threads binding all existence, it struck him how art itself is an immortal soul in a physical vessel. To create for Matteo became to give life unto stillness, His palette held both paint and memories that transcended lifetimes while echoing within canvas confines or through whispers carried on the evening breeze across Florence's storied streets. In this night's end, as he dimmed lantern light to mere amber embers flickering in his weary gaze, Matteo felt a kinship with each artist who had ever poured their essence into creation or lineage of souls that spoke through time and beyond. He knew then the city itself was not merely an observer, but also a cherished participant in this nocturnal odyssey. Florence's cobbled arteries pulsed with stories as old as stone, each whispering their secrets to those who would listen beneath her watchful eyes and protective embrace. With the final touch of his brush upon canvas or tender stroke that sealed within its fibers an invitation for onlookers' spirits to partake in a dance through time as old as love itself, Matteo knew he had completed more than just another painting. It was as if Florence herself nodded her approval from every nook and cranny of the cityscape. This artwork would not merely be seen, but felt her peace that transcended its physical form to touch upon souls across ages in Chapter 6 of Matteo's nocturnal journey through Florence's streets and canvases alike. He found himself drawn to an ancient gallery where time seemed irrelevant, or place untouched by centuries yet whispering with life as if the walls themselves bore witness. Herein lay a collection that transcended mere art. It was like stepping into another realm entirely. Each piece told tales not just of love, but also loss, and longing intertwined in hues so vibrant they seemed to have their own soul's voice amidst the echoes of history. Matteo's fingers traced over sculptures that spoke of ancient gods with faces weathered by time yet eyes alight with eternal youth, while paintings on adjacent walls blurred reality into a dreamlike tapestry where every color sang and danced to its own harmonic rhythm. It was within this gallery's embrace Matteo encountered Lorenzo's enigmatic figure, whose presence felt as though he belonged both in the artwork and not at all, for his life story unraveled before him like a painting with blurred lines yet vivid colors that painted tales of passionate encounters and quiet moments under moonlit skies. As if compelled by an invisible thread woven through their shared history within the city's embrace, Matteo approached Lorenzo, who stood pensively before his own masterpiece, a canvas where light seemed to leap from shadows as though caught in a perpetual twilight ballet. The artwork was unassuming yet breathtaking. It depicted two figures amidst an ancient Florentine garden, their hands entwined but eyes locked with purposeful distance, conveying love not just for each other's presence but also the essence of freedom found within shared solitude. Lorenzo's gaze met Matteo's, and in that instant a silent conversation passed between the Macommunion, transcending words yet understood by souls deeply entrenched with Florence itself. The artist spoke without uttering a word. He acknowledged the kinship of creation they shared under this city's watchful gaze, which had nurtured countless like-minded spirits, each adding layers to an ever-growing tapestry that celebrated humanity's eternal search for beauty and understanding. Matteo felt a pull towards Lorenzo, not just as fellow creator, but also kindred spirit or soul who saw beyond the surface of things into their very essence. He knew within him, in his brushstrokes, lay hidden stories yearning to be told through eyes that could see them and touch souls across time. With each step taken alongside Lorenzo under Florence's night sky dotted with stars mirroring jewels from the artwork, they both held dear. Matteo felt an invitation, unfold a journey not just of exploration, but one where every sight unveiled deeper truths about love and existence itself. They ventured through cobblestone alleys that seemed to breathe with stories whispered by ancestors who had once roamed the same streets, their own artworks fading like ghosts into twilight memories yet never truly lost in time's embrace, as Florence continued her eternal dance of history and rebirth. Matteo felt a stirring within him, a desire to not just witness but become part of this living gallery, where every pigment held power. Each brushstroke had life force behind it that could move hearts across centuries without faltering in its resonance or fading into oblivion like the restless winds through Tuscan valleys. As they reached a secluded piers bathed in moonlight and shadow where two statues on sorrowful beauty, another one full of silent strength stood as guardians to tales only Florence could tell, Matteo realized that his own story was but the beginning of an odyssey through artistic communion. Here he would learn not just from Lorenzo or bystanders who too seemed touched by a deeper understanding born in this city's heartbeat, but also within himself, for to touch others with one's soul is perhaps Florence's most sacred gift she imparts upon her children of creation as they walk beneath the weight and blessing of history. In these moments, where time folded into itself like origami shapes that danced between matte and luster, Matteo knew he was no longer simply an artist, but a pilgrim in Florence's sanctum, or guardian now to tales yet untold within his own spirit's canvas. The city had been patient with him all these years as her child. She would continue so long into the future, providing end as Matteo stood in awe before Lorenzo's latest masterpiece in intricate fresco that seemed to pulse with life under the pale moonlight. His heart swelled with gratitude and wonderment for this city of eternal artistry. The piazza, where they often congregated, had become more than just an open-air gallery. It was a cradle nurturing Matteo's newfound reverence not only towards the creations that surrounded him, but also his own emerging identity as one interwoven with Florence's rich tapestry. The evening breeze carried whispers of bygone eras, and every gust seemed to speak of Lorenzo's legacy or lineage traced back through centuries, each touch imbued within the city walls like a sacred incantation passed down from matriarchal guild masters. It was here, in this hallowed space, that Matteo felt himself embraced by history, as if he were its latest apprentice destined to inherit Florence's artistic throne, a throne built upon marble dreams and oil-tinted aspirations, not just a simple artist's easel. With Lorenzo at his side, Matteo traced the lines of their shared journey with reverent fingertips that brushed against cool stone as they walked through cobblestone alleys lined by whispering bougainvillea and statues draped in moonbeams, their shadows playfully mimicking his every step. Florence, the city of perpetual springtime youthfulness under night's embrace, seemed to say that they were not merely visitors but custodians entrusted with carrying forth her artistic soul into futures unforeseen. As he turned a corner in an old quarter known for its tapestries and wrought iron lamps flickering like fireflies, Matteo's gaze fell upon the Uffizit's grand structure towering above him as if it were Florence's open arms beckoning them closer to her secrets. In this hallowed hall of Renaissance masterpieces, where light played with shadow and color danced before his eyes like auroras, Matteo saw not just paintings, but windows into souls that lived on through time's relentless march. Each brushstroke was a heartbeat echoing the city's own. The air within these walls thrummed with silent conversations between creation and observer, a communion transcending spoken language, where Matteo felt he could hear colors sing in harmony, as if they were old friends sharing tales of their genesis amidst Florence's embrace. It was here that the boundaries blurred for him. Art no longer a mere spectator, but an active participant or living entity with whom his spirit resonated and conversed without words, its dialogue felt in every pore as if he shared blood ties to those who first brought it into existence centuries ago. On the eve of Matteo's birthday celebration, which coincided eerily well with these visions, Florence had tenderly unfurled within him a gift from Lorenzo, a sketchbook bound in leather and inscribed on its cover, "For your journey is not just one to be cherished but shared." It seemed as though the city itself was offering Matteo her own canvas or pilgrimage through artistic communion that would etch his story alongside those of countless others who walked these paths. The following day, under a sky painted with strokes of rose and amber hues, Lorenzo guided him to an abandoned atelier cloaked in ivy where once great masters had conjured worlds from their palaces, or place that seemed as much forgotten by time itself as it was yearning for rediscovery. As they stepped into the room bathed in dusk motes dancing like tiny sunbeams, Matteo's eyes fell upon a faded canvas resting on easel, cradled within shadowed cornice, or ghostly reflection of an unfinished symphony that spoke to his soul with whispered promises. Lorenzo shared tales woven from fabric and paint, as if he were reciting legends passed down through the generations, urging Matteo's hand toward creation in a manner most intimate, or mentorship transcending lifetimes of knowledge that only this city could impart upon an artist's heart. They delved into canvases where sorrow and strength mingled indistinguishably. Each stroke was as much about preserving history as it was birthing a new world onto the canvas, or narrative etched by hands guided not merely by sight, but as Dawn unfurled its rosy fingers across the cityscape of Florence. Matteo felt a gentle pull in his chest, or call to which he could not escape, as Lorenzo led him towards an ancient courtyard where echoes seemed rooted within stone walls and cobblestone. The morning air was crisp with hints of dew that had kissed the earth through night's cool embrace, carrying whispers from a time when art flourished in quiet corners like secret gardens for humanity's soul to Tendershul. Upon reaching an unassuming door carved with symbols lost to modern memory, but revered by those who understood the language of forgotten eras, Matteo felt his pulse quicken, or heartbeat in sync with history's rhythm as Lorenzo knocked thrice upon its ancient frame. The sound that greeted them was more a murmur than clapping. It seemed even time respected this sacred threshold between worlds and eras, urging Matteo to cross into the unknown, where his story could find completion amidst relics of yore, a pilgrimage within an atelier frozen in history's gentle grass. With Lorenzo's hand upon his shoulder, as if sensing a kindred spirit beneath layers of paint and experiences, Matteo pushed open the door to reveal chambers where shadows played with light across forgotten works, or sacred sanctuary for creatives who had once shared whispers in this very room. The air was dense with memories. It clung like a fine mist upon his skin as he took breaths that tasted of oil and turpentine, each one heavy with the legacy of hands long past but not forgotten, tear lives eternally intertwined within these silent sentinels of artistry. Together they explored every corner where time had curled around canvases like a protective embrace, or left them bare as if to challenge onlookers with the raw truths painted upon their surfaces, each piece an elegy for times gone by, yet also a testament that though worlds change and epochs fade into legend, beauty birthed from suffering endures, immortalized through color and line. Matteo's eyes traced patterns of passion, etched in ochre hues mixed with the sorrowful blues, reflecting lives lived to their fullest yet often too swiftly. Each stroke told tales that danced beyond time's grasp, a visual symphony where every note was felt rather than heard. The atelier whispered its secrets through silent communion, or sacred language spoken in the tender caress of brush against canvas and wax seal upon parchment. Matteo learned not from words, but by touching life with his fingertips, as if to coax stories into existence, guided only by intuition that spoke louder than any lecturer could, in education in the silent wisdom of hands long at rest and eyes unblinking despite centuries spent watching over their children's dreamscapes. As he journeyed through this sanctuary where art was not merely created but born, Matteo found his own reflection amidst pigments that felt like memories or mosaic of experiences from the lives who had once stood before these walls and poured themselves into their work as if to share a moment across time. The city itself seemed alive with each artistic echo resonating within him, whispering tales spun by masters whose legacy was now his inheritance. It beckoned Matteo deeper still, where the boundary between observer and creator blurred at a threshold that promised rebirth through understanding old souls' eternal refrains. Under Lorenzo's watchful eye, he encountered works of painters who had captured not just light, but essence itself. They shared tales from their canvases, where the divine mingled with mortal coils and beauty emerged, as if it were a phoenix reborn amidst asha, cycle that promised renewal for those daring to dream. Each tale was an invitation, urging Matteo onward through doorways of inspiration hidden within layers of varnish aged like the skin of time, itself an offering laid before him in every shadowed corner and sunbeam-drenched nook where art waited for hands willing enough to uncover its whispers. In this atelier, Matteo came face to canvas with his own aspirations. He peered into eyes that had seen the world transform yet remained everlastingly young, a constant reminder of eternity's dance between creation and decay, where even in death art finds its voice as vibrant testimony. The dialogue transcended mere words, flowing through in that place where time seemed to fold upon itself like pages in an ancient tome. Matteo's gaze lingered on a particularly stirring piece, a canvas awash with colors so vivid they appeared almost otherworldly against the somber backdrop. It was here he discovered something new, not just light and shadow, but emotion eternally captured in pigment that seemed to pulse beneath his fingertips, as if alive itself, each hue telling its own silent symphony of stories untold since those first strokes were laid down centuries ago. Beneath the watchful eyes of Lorenzo, and amidst whispers from bygone Erasser gallery that had not seen a visitor in decades, but now thrived with Matteo's presence, as if his very soul belonged to this forgotten atelier, for time was an artist too. It wasn't long before the masterpieces began revealing themselves more intimately, one after another beckoning him closer until he could almost hear their silent music or cadence that spoke of passion and sorrow intermingling inseparably with joy, as if each painting were a note on its own instrument. The air felt charged, Every corner seemed to hum with an energy so tangible it was like touching the threads weaving through time itself, pulling Matteo deeper into this sacred communion where art spoke directly to his heartstrings without utterance of sound or syllable, their essence a language beyond words. As he wandered further from familiar paths and ventured down corridors veiled in the dusty embrace of history, Matteo encountered another masterpiece, one that depicted not just an individual, but seemed to encapsulate entire lifetimes within its confines, a testament to shared human experience across epochs. It reminded him how art mirrors life itself, a mosaic where each fragment contributes uniquely, yet together they form something far greater than the sum of their parts. It was as if he could reach through time and touch these lives frozen in eternal repose upon canvas or gallery within galleries that held infinite stories. The journey continued until Matteo found himself before a mirror reflecting not his own image, but one wherein each stroke portrayed an aspect of the human soul, with shadows playing across as if to reveal its secrets hidden in plain sight. Here he was greeted by reflections that transcended mere physical appearance and beckoned him towards introspection. This piece whispered softly about identitative layers upon one's self-portrait, painted not just of flesh but of spirit, ambition, fear, love, loss, hope, all elements eternally entwined in the dance of life's grand tapestry that even death could not unravel. In an alcove bathed in golden light streaming through stained glass windows, or mirage amidst a sea of faded grandeur where once such splendor had reigned supreme, Matteo's gaze fell upon works from the Renaissance, their brilliance undimmed by age. The artists who created them were as alive in spirit now more than ever. Each work was an echoing lament or celebration of humanity's perennial quest for beauty and meaning, a reminder that art endures not just through its creation, but within the hearts it touches with every generation born under the same sun. Here, surrounded by these silent sentinels of creativity from days when brush was mightier than sword or pen, Matteo felt a kinship, like he himself had journeyed back in time to commune once more with those who dared dream beyond their era's constraints, to see not just what lay before them, but the world that stretched out on either side of this temporal river. As if by magic, each painting seemed less an individual work and more a chapter within an unwritten book. Together they narrated tales of love found in fleeting glances across crowded squares, where artists gathered to share their visions or collective memory etched into the fabric itself like stars upon night's velvet canopy. A floor below, under arches heavy with shadows and stories untold for ages, pasted together as if by time travelers who had stepped through these very walls but from a different era altogether, Matteo found himself face to facade of history, where each sculpture bore the weight of countless eyes that once beheld it, their gazes imprinting upon stone and marble like living souls yearning for recognition. And then there was this one or canvas depicting a scene so simple yet profoundly moving. Onlookers gathered in silence around an open fire as night desked, as Matteo's gaze meandered through a seemingly infinite gallery of artworks, each one more enchanting than the last. He found himself inexplicably drawn to an isolated corner where echoes seemed suspended like droplets hanging on before fallen. There was something about this painting that whispered directly into his soul. It depicted not just a fire, but also its hearth or warm and inviting embrace amidst the gathering chill of twilight, with children laughing around as mothers told tales under flickering lanterns, while elders recited ancient folklore that had long since become legends themselves. He watched for hours on end. Time seemed to halt in reverence before this canvas where generations mingled harmoniously, their stories interwoven with the flames' dance at tapestry of life so vivid it was as though he could reach out and touch its warmth. The room around him faded into insignificance until his own heartbeat matched that rhythm, a steady cadence to remind Matteo of continuity, the enduring pulse within history's veins, where art serves not only as an archive but also as a vessel for communal memory. On this particular evening, when shadows began their descent like curtain calls at day's final act and twilight played hide-and-seek with the last of sunlight, Matteo found himself enveloped in tales spun from hues that seemed to shift as he listened closer, a kaleidoscope where colors merged into dreamscapes. Herein was a painter whose touch had birthed landscapes alive, skies painted blue, but somehow held the promise of rain and whispering leaves, fields ripe with golden wheat swaying like dancers to an unheard melody that played on through seasons eternal. The very air seemed thick with stories as Matteo moved from one masterpiece to another. Canvases sprawled across the gallery floor bore witness to narratives of love and loss, journeys undertaken by figures bold or meeker, collective memory engraved in oils that had seeped into timber frames. He traced lines where rivers flowed like blood through veins painted on parchment skin. Mountains emerged as stoic sentinels, guarding secrets nestled within their rocky embrace, and forests breathed with a life of their own, a symphony that played across textured surfaces in silent reverence. Matteo's fingers grazed the cool touchstone beside him. Here was sculpture where marble seemed to pulse beneath his fingertips like another form entirely, one not still but alive with presence and an echo of past sentiments or dialogue between creator and creation that transcended time. As he stood before a figure wrought from the very essence of resolve and grace, Matteo felt as though it were his own reflection in bronze, where once again faced himself across millennia, but this face bore not just wisdom or aging lines, but an unyielded spirit that had touched history itself. And then there was a door, a gateway framed by archways heavy with shadows and stories piled high like the layers of dust under his bed back home, each particle carrying whispers from forgotten eras where Matteo's own lineage might have once walked through these very halls before vanishing into the mists of time. It beckoned silently to him, a threshold that was not a portal, but rather an invitation wrapped in enigma. Beyond it, he could glimpse zero for something more than just paint and stone or marble and dust. He hesitated only long enough before his decision rooted itself firmly within. Matteo took the step backward, as if to retreat from time's unfathomable depth, but found himself compelled forward, drawn by an inexplicable force that seemed almost a whisper against the clamor of centuries past, echoing around him, a siren call for stories untold and histories yet born. With each step he took down this corridor where history embraced its future kin with open arms, Matteo felt as though his very soul was being painted afresh upon the broad canvas of existence itself, every color more vibrant than any artist's palette had ever dared to dream. There were moments when he thought perhaps it wasn't just art, but a living entity, an organism that breathed with each heartbeat resonating within these ancient walls, and Matteo was not merely an observer or participant in its story. No, he felt as though he had become part of this ever-unfolding chapter 11 of Matteo's journey into the heart of history and mystery. He found himself within a grand foyer that defied time itself, a place where shadows played with light to create patterns reminiscent of ancient frescoes, yet vibrant as if touched by modern artistry. The air here hummed with whispers from epochs long past. Matteo felt every word carving out the story within him, and he closed his eyes for a moment, longer than necessary before daring to open them again, a testament of trust in this newfound sanctuary where time's flow seemed as fluid, as if sensing his presence amongst echoes of countless footsteps that had trodden these halls. The statuesque guardians watching over him from their perch along every wall began to shift imperceptibly or silent, not perhaps in acknowledgement or encouragement for Matteo's bold intrusion into a realm where his essence could merge with legend. He stood now before an ornate door carved of dark wood, its surface swirling like the night sky itself, constellations that seemed to move and blinked at him as if alive, in invitation not just seen, but felt in Matteo's very bones. Hesitating once more under this watchful gaze before embarking upon his path, he allowed himself a shiver of anticipation rather than trepidation to run through his veins, for within him stirred the yearning not just for discovery but connection or symbiosis with something far greater and ancient. His hand extended toward the door's handle as if guided by unseen forces, each fingerprint a testament of histories lived in silence waiting to be retold through his touch alone. He took another step backward before turning around once more, for this was where fate had chosen him over countless other souls. Without uttering words that could disturb the delicate tapestry woven from threads both tangible and ethereal, Matteo knocked on wood, a symbolic gesture meant to honor those who walked these halls before his own time arrived upon theirs, as whispers of conversations with long-deceased patrons seemed to echo in the gentle rapping sound that filled the air. The door swung open silently, revealing beyond it a vestibule adorned not just by opulence, but also enlightenment, or chamber where light itself was captured within crystal prisms hanging from ceilings high and far above him. Here photons danced in rainbows of colors that painted themselves across the walls, telling tales more vivid than any Matteo had ever witnessed. The air felt charged with energy as he moved deeper into this place where time was a river flowing through his fingertips, and every step forward allowed him access to untold stories etched upon marble and parchment alike. The past here seemed almost tangible, like threads that could be plucked out one by one only if they wished. He traced fingers over a mosaic depicting moments frozen in time or vibrant scene of an ancient marketplace where laughter rang as clearly today as it did when those people had lived their lives. He saw his own reflection amongst them, acknowledging the eternal dance between humanity and its history. It was within this very heartbeat that Matteo came upon a grand library, its shelves lined with books whose spines gleamed like jewels in an emperor's crown. They beckoned him forward, whispering secrets of their contents, as though knowledge itself had been eager to share its treasures. With reverence for the wisdom held within those leather-bound covers that have seen epochs come and go from this very spot upon which he now stood alone amongst them, a last scholar in his own right among historians who never lived but whose stories were as real here as any living memory Matteo carried with him. Each book told tales of heroes, villains, love lost to the sands that have slipped through time's fingers since they first fell from above. Their narratives wove themselves around Matteo's senses like a tapestry so vast and intricate it seemed impossible for any one person alone could embrace its entirety. Yet, as he delved into tales of valor, tragedy, joy, sorrow or thread began to connect him with the heartbeat that had always pulsed through these pages. Matteo felt himself becoming a part of their legacy, even while knowing this was but one story among countless others nestled in his mind as he journeyed forward. He passed rooms where sculptures breathed as Matteo's fingertips traced along the spines of ancient tomes and epic poems. He paused before a peculiar volume that seemed to hum with an ethereal glow among its peers in the grand library or repository for humanity's collective dreams. Its cover was worn from centuries within these walls, but still bore engravings depicting celeste zero-isle bodies and constellations, as if charted by a seafarer of old who had voyaged through knowledge rather than oceans. He reached out with reverence for the wisdom held in its time-worn pages that could connect him across ages to those very same star-crossed travelers he felt part of his bloodline in, ancestral connection, perhaps. Opening it carefully on an ornate wooden stand adorned with intricate carvings matching the stars outside from which sunlight occasionally pierced through dusty windows and landscapes depicted within. The book revealed tales not only about Earth, but also of distant lands unknown to modern civilization, where mythic beasts roamed alongside humans, guided by fate's hand in a dance as old as time itself. Matteo found himself lost for hours at the sight of such marvelous stories. They were woven so seamlessly into his spirit that he could almost hear the clashing swords and feel the weight of legendary armors, yet all felt like distant echoes from a world not quite real enough to be tangible. As night began its slow encroachment upon day in this timeless sanctuary, Matteo continued his pilgrimage through narratives penned by forgotten scribes whose words still held power over lifetimes of readers who came before him and would continue after he had gone back to a world that seemed increasingly disconnected from the simple truths and natural wonders they once knew. With each story, Matteo's heart resonated with an understanding deeper than mere academic knowledge. It was as if through learning these tales of yore, his own soul found its voice within the mad melody harmonizing ancient wisdom to guide him toward a future where he hoped such truths would not be lost again. In the company of this silent symphony and under watchful eyes of painted figures that seemed almost alive in their stillness on the library walls, Matteo sensed an unspoken invitation to carry forward these stories into his own life or to let them rest here amongst echoes where they belonged. The decision felt right. He had always known himself as a guardian rather than simply a historian of facts and dates that might one day tarnish in memory like old coins lost underfoot within the mists of forgetfulness. As his hands closed upon this last volume, Matteo knew it was time to leave behind these tales for just another soul or perhaps not. For as he turned from face to face with countless eyes that had seen empires rise and fall through their bindings, a gentle understanding blossomed within him. Legacies are never truly left. They simply change hands like the seasons themselves or ripples in water when pebbles of history disrupt its surface. The library seemed to breathe with contented sighs as Matteo exited into the hushed hallways where whispers of his footsteps were drowned out by a comforting silence, their place beyond time and space that held him like this for an eternity before he could let go. He paused at the threshold to acknowledge one final goodbye, not just from himself but also to these sentinels of story who had stood watch over human triumphs and tragedies since their ink first dried upon paper centuries ago. It was here that Matteo found his resolve solidifying within him like alchemy, transmuting fear into fortitude. Scholars' duty to share what he learned with the world beyond these walls, where tales of valor and humanity's follies were needed most in a time when screens often clouded more than enlightened. With each step out from underneath those vaulted ceilings that sheltered his journey through narrative realms, both wondrous and darker sacred promise was forged to ensure these stories would not be lost again. This is in chapter 13. Matteo found himself wandering through a land where time seemed to stand still yet move at its own peculiar pace, or place called Eldoria. This realm was as much an extension of history's echoes as the library had been, only here it thrived with life that respected and preserved stories in ways beyond human comprehension. Eldoria's essence lay within a crystal clear lake at its heart, shimmering under eternal lighter sun, perpetually poised on the horizon by an invisible edge to this land, untouched by mortal hands for centuries. The trees bore fruits that whispered tales of their origin and fate before they were plucked from branches cradled in time's embrace, a symphony only heard when one dared to listen beyond words. Matteo approached the lake's edge with reverence, his heart pounding softly like rain on still water, a gentle cadence that mirrored Eldoria itself. As he knelt beside it and cupped hands within its cool depth, a single silverfish emerged from beneath the crystal-clear surface, glinting in reflected light as if to acknowledge his presence with an ancient nod of understanding across worlds divided by time's unyielding march forward, but somehow intertwined here. The fish led him deeper into Eldoria, until they stood atop a hill crowned by the tree of whispering leaves, whose leaves rustled secrets only to those who truly yearned for knowledge that transcended time or wisdom Matteo had sought within the library's hallowed texts. The tree's roots were entwined with symbols carved into stone at its base by a civilization long since passed from memory and life, their legacies now entrusted to Eldoria as guardians of eternal tales. As Matteo traced his fingers along the runes that spoke not just history but prophecy, too oft times when man would rise again with stories in need of safeguarding like himself, silverfish returned, guiding him towards a clearing where fireflies danced around an altar to storytelling. There he encountered beings who were the embodiment of narratives lost and forgotten. They communicated through light patterns that painted tales across the night sky without utterance or written word, an ethereal language born from Eldoria's unique magic, where history's heartbeat resonated in silent understanding. In a moment touched by transcendence between what is and what could be, Matteo witnessed events that were yet to unfold but felt as though they had always been, or glimpse into the future woven from threads of countless possibilities guided only by Eldoria's timeless gaze. It was here he understood his place within this continuum, a custodian not just for tales lost and found, but to bridge past wisdom with forthcoming truths that would shape humanity's journey forward, a noble pursuit in times when forgotten stories seemed all too easily discarded by the rush of modern life. The silverfish beckoned him back towards home as dawn began its approach from beyond Eldoria's invisible horizon, promising a world where Matteo could share his newfound resolve and purpose with others, a realm still ensnared in history's complex tapestry, but one that had yet to learn the true value of every story. And so he rose before sun as peaked above Eldoria's horizon, carrying within him a promise as enduring as time itself. Tales woven from this extraordinary experience would flow forth like lifeblood into his world, or gift for those who had forgotten how to listen and remember the legacies that shaped their existence. As Matteo's steps carried him away, each one echoed with a pledge of return, where he could continue learning from Eldoria's silent tutors in narrative alchemy, where every story was an elixir to cure the illnesses of ignorance and forgetfulness. With that last look back at this place beyond time, Matteo departed with a heart swelling not just with gratitude, but also enriched by purpose. For stories were never truly forgotten as long as there was someone who dared remember them, and he would be the one to ensure they found their voice once more. The world awaited him still, where light filtered through windows and eyes eagerly sought out new wonders in text that spoke of heroes and villains alike. A place just on the cusp between reality and reverie, a realm hungry for tales to feed its soul's narrative hunger. The town's square was abuzz as the day waned into twilight. Voices converged in conversation, tales bouncing off one another like ripples across a pond, when lured by Matteo's own recounting of Eldoria's rich tapestry. He spoke first to an old weaver whose fingers danced over threads as if they were the very sinews and veins that animated his stories, ensuring each yarn spun was tight with truth yet delicate enough to be felt but not seen in full form until unraveled at home under candlelight. In Eldoria, Matteo began softly, "Our history is intertwined like the very fibers you work into tapestries." He spoke of a great calamity that befell them, years or tempest so fierce it seemed to rend the sky itself asunder. The weaver's eyes misted over with recognition. His grandmother had survived this cataclysm, and she too shared tales by their hearth-fire of how a young hero arose from adversity's crucible beacon of hope amidst despair that rebuilt what was lost. As night settled upon Eldoria, like a mantle over the shoulders of old friends gathered around flickering flames, Matteo wove stories for those who listened with rapt attention, while others sought to reclaim pieces slipping through their fingers, grasp a reminder that memory is not solely retained in mind, but also sewn into the fabric of our shared narrative. He found himself at a humble cafe, where patrons lingered over cups brimming with steaming herbal concoctions, said to invigorate spirit and sharpen with perfect elixir for an audience thirsty not just for drink, but knowledge long still in the night's air. Here he recounted tales of explorers who set forth from Eldoria's heart, their eyes alight with curiosity, as they traversed distant lands and returned home bearing gifts unseen yet indelibly etched upon every face that listened at her testament to adventure's spirit in the soul. In a quiet library, where books stood like sentinels guarding wisdom's sanctum, Matteo engaged with scholars whose lives were dedicated not merely to learning but cherishing each syllable as if it held eternity itself within its bounds. He shared stories of scribes who once penned histories that bridged worlds and time-stories now lost in the silence between generations, only remembered by those like Matteo whose hearts beat with reverence for narrative's power to connect us across chasms unseen yet deeply felt. As dusk deepened into night's embrace, he found himself before a grand hall where echoes of applause and laughter had once filled the air in celebration of heroic deeds, or place now hushed but for Matteo's voice lifting spirits to soar on wings woven from yesteryears. He spoke not just with words, but painted pictures across minds' canvases, a warrior whose valor knew no bounds and who faced trials that would have shattered lesser men. Through courage born of love for his realm's children he emerged as legend incarnate when the darkest hour demanded light most pure. Night deepened further, yet Matteo's resolve remained steadfast. Tales must not fade into oblivion, but be reclaimed and reborn in hearts that still beat with yearning for yours enchantments. He approached a crossroad where paths converged like streams, feeding the river of life, or place frequented by dreamers who sought solace beneath starlight's watchful gaze, their spirits woven from threads spun not just in sleep but visions that propelled them beyond tomorrow's dawn. To those whose eyes spoke more than words ever could about the tapestry of life, as Matteo's voice continued to thread through darkness like silver silk, he spoke of a place where legends walked alongside mortals, a sanctum known as Elisir's Hollow. It was there that fate had intertwined the destinies of many great souls whose deeds echoed in history's grand hall even now. In this hallowed ground, Matteo wandered through groves laden with blossoms that whispered tales older than time itself to those who dared listen her testament to love and loss, interwoven like the roots beneath their feet. Each petal bore witness to lives lived boldly or in quietude. Some bloomed vibrantly, whilst others wilted under sorrow's relentless gaze, but never quite fell apart from memory's soil nurturing them still. Nearing a tranquil pond that mirrored the sky above with such clarity one might mistake it for divine intervention itself, Matteo paused and reflected on this sanctuary's sincere place, where every ripple told stories of joyous celebrations turned into mournful echoes. The water shimmered beneath a crescent moon as if offering solace to his contemplative soul. It was here that he found the courage needed for tales untold and futures yet woven by dreamers. And alike, he came upon an ancient oak tree, its gnarled limbs stretching skyward like open arms embraced with countless secrets, or sentinel guardian of legends past and future, stories to be told beneath the emerald umbrella it created on a starlit night. Leaves rustled softly as if in quiet conversation, sharing whispers carried by winds from faraway lands where tales birthed under Elisur's hollow moon had journeyed across seas and through time's sieve to reach here. Matteo traced the initial carved runes of many a name upon its bark, knights, poets, scholars whose spirits seemed as present in this sacred space as they were when their stories first took flight from fervent quills or clashing steel or confluence where time's river flowed with the current yet untouchable by decay's grasp. In his wanderings among these hallowed grounds, he crossed paths with Alara, a young dreamer whose eyes held galaxies of hope and despair in delicate balance. She sought wisdom from tales spun beneath this very night's velvet sky, or seeker after truth, where fantasy intertwined seamlessly. Her voice was light as feather, yet resonant enough to shake the dust off long-forgotten stories buried deep within Matteo's heart, awakening them with a touch lighter than moonbeams upon dew-kissed cobwebs at dawn's first blush. Together they sat before an ancient stone fireplace where embers danced like flickering sprites in the glow of twilight, and tales unfurled from their lips as naturally as leaves parting ways with a bough to greet autumn's chill caress, or communion between storyteller, listener, time itself. Alara's questions were keys that turned locks within Matteo's soul. Each query opened doors, adorned in the finery of bygone eras where heroes and villains alike played upon life's grand stage of performance, without script nor end, but only just beginning for those who sought to partake. Matteo shared tales that bridged generations, binding listeners with threads spun from courage's very essence. His words wove a tapestry of valor and vulnerability, where every heart felt the warmth like hands cupped in friendship's embracer, testament to humanity united beneath history's watchful eye. Alara found within these stories reflections mirrored back at her, not just stranger parts but familiar constellations guiding ships through night's unknown waters. She saw herself as heroes and villains alike in tales where victory was sweeter for its shared sacrifice or journey to understand the souls of others while nurturing one's own. As hours unfurled like ribbons from a spool, Alara spoke her dreams with candor that carved pathways through Matteo's mind. He listened intently as visions took shape within his heart, or mosaic of experiences painting vistas hitherto only visited in sleep's embrace. Their dialogue flowed like a melody played on instruments birthed from the world as twilight descended upon Alara and Matteo's shared quarters within a time-worn library. They found themselves enveloped by tales as old as civilization itself, her comforting blanket of law that promised to tether their spirits through the night. The ancient clock ticked in rhythm with heartbeats, while Alara leaned closer towards Matteo's earnest face under candlelight's dance, sharing her dream not for herself but as a gift she hoped would serve him to, a shared experience that was both personal and communal within the sanctity of their nocturnal refuge. Alara spoke with conviction about an age where empires rose from dust-covered desert sands to touch skies, weaving her aspirations into a narrative thread spun by legendary heroes whose names echoed through time like the refrains of hymns that inspired generals and commoners alike. She painted this past with strokes broad yet tender, where each character's virtue or vice was as clear to them then as her own feelings now seemed transparent before Matteo's attentive gaze. Her tale took a turn towards the realm of mythology, when she recounted how creatures born from mankind's deepest fears and highest ideals would come into being. These beings were neither wholly good nor evil, but rather complex, living embodiments that challenged each hero to reflect upon their own nature. Alara's voice grew soft, as the moonlight seeping through curtain cracks cast a silver glow on her words, an intimate luminescence revealing shadows of doubt and desire within Matteo's eyes, which he wore like badges of honor, for in their shared dreaming lay recognition of one another's humanity. As the hours whispered by with a quiet grace that belied their weight upon her chest, Alara ventured deeper into stories where love and loss were partners entwined, so tightly they seemed to share breath itself, or dance as eternal as time, yet ever-changing in its steps through each soul's journey. She spoke of lovers separated by war or fate who found solace, knowing their connection transcended the temporal, much like how her own heart ached for him across vast distances, unseen and unknown to them both, but felt all too keenly as if she had drawn his pulse into a cup from which he drank. Matteo absorbed Alara's dream with an intensity that mirrored their shared passion, becoming the conduit through which her aspirations flowed forth, her living vessel to carry stories between realms where past and present mingled like watercolors bleeding into one another on paper wet from rain. His mind painted for him a world of vivid detail with every word she spoke. He could hear the clash of swords, feel the fabric weave under fingertips as they embraced in silent promise their spectacle that played out within his imagination's amphitheater without an audience save two hearts beating to a common rhythm. And then came Alora's most profound revelation. She spoke of time not just as enemy or ally, but rather as the grand stage upon which all stories unfold, or force that could heal wounds and unravel mysteries with equal ease if one knew how to tune into its tempo. In sharing her dream, Illara offered Matteo a key, for within it lay insights, not just about history's characters, but reflections of their own souls laid bare, chance at understanding that stretched beyond the mere act of listening and spoke directly from one spirit to another across ears untethered by chronology. As dream faded into waking thought, Ilara's heart ached for Matteo's far-off journey through time, yet rejoiced in their shared endeavor, that nighter communion of spirits bridged not just by geography, but the continuum of human experience itself. The library around them stood as a testament to history and imagination, its walls lined with silent witnesses who had heard countless tales before her own. Now she added another chapter wherein Matteo's presence was felt despite his physical absence, their beacon that guided ships through night's unknown waters. In the quiet aftermath of their shared dreaming, Illara and Matteo found themselves alone again within the stillness between sleep and wakefulness. A space where words once spoken could only echo as memories in time's corridor, a reminder that every ending is but an invitation to begin anew. As they bid each other good night with promises of stories yet untold, ere as Illara and Matteo settled into their respective beds, a gentle hush enveloped them both, a peaceful pause between worlds of consciousness, where time seemed to hold its breath. The library's grand clock chimed softly in the background, marking not just hours, but epochs that had slipped through history like water through cupped hands. Matteo lay awake for a while longer than Illara, his eyelids heavy with thoughts of his own era as much as they weighed down on dreams from hers. The library, usually silent except when filled by seekers, soft footfalls and the occasional rustle of pages being turned, felt unusually still that night, a serene tableau suspended in time where two hearts had found solace amidst its endless shelves. Illara closed her eyes with a sigh as she drifted deeper into sleep's embrace, her mind awash with the vibrant hues of Matteo's dream world, each color more lustrous than the last. In his solitary chamber on another continent and centuries away in time, he too felt a kinship to Illara that transcended physical distance, their spirits dancing together beneath layers of fabric woven with stories, untold or silent, symphony played only for themselves under moonlight's approving gaze. Matteo traced the contours of his dream as it swelled and ebbed, its tempo sinking inexplicably to Ilara's heartbeat. Even now, miles away, but somehow always near, his thoughts spun like leaves caught in a gentle breeze, tales from ancient Rome that whispered secrets of power, struggles cloaked under velvet robes and laurel crowns, echoes of philosophers debating the essence beneath their skin, seeking truths as timeless now as they were then. Matteo's dream wove these threads into a tapestry rich with human endeavor, a reminder that while civilizations rise and fall like waves crashing upon distant shores, ambition and curiosity endure through the ages in unending streams of aspiration. As dawn painted its first golden strokes across skies far beyond his window-pane view, Matteo felt a gentle pull back to wakefulness, a reminder that dreams were but fleeting phantoms until they took shape on paper and within the soul's quiet corners. Once more he murmured an oath of return to history's embrace, with every sunbeam refracted through his lenses, each one a promise, not just for himself or Illara alone, but also as testament that their shared dream had transcended beyond mere fantasy into the realm where time held no dominion. And when at last he rose from beneath silken covers to greet an era of invention and discovery, Matteo carried with him a silent promise. This was but one night's voyage across centuries vast as oceans, her shared experience that threaded his essence through Ilara's tapestry. With every sunrise he would rise from sleep to touch the world anew, while remembering her warmth on cool nights in ancient forums and marble halls, where ideas sparkled like stars above them both as they stood beneath a canopy of history's endless sky, towed forever if but in spirit. As Matteo prepared himself to face the day ahead with eyes once more open wide by waking light's touch. He looked upon Alara resting silently and peacefully within arm's reach across time itself, their shared dream a bridge over which souls could tread no matter when or where they might find themselves. In her presence alone did Matteo feel the weight of ages, lift her comfort found in companionship that transcended ears, understanding without words spoken aloud, but felt deep within his being as if Alara was always there with him, even across time's expanse and miles apart by mere chance or cosmic jest. With a final nod to the unspoken bond they shared or secret only their hearts could comprehend between those hours of sleep where dreaming souls converse without utterance but through essence alone, Matteo rose, his footsteps echoing softly in empty halls as he made way for history's next chapter. And though no handshake was needed nor eyes to greet or farewell, this silent pact between him and Alara lingered on the library's walls like a whisper caught within aged pages, binding them across realms with an invisible thread spun from shared humanity or testament, that even as one soul ventured forth into history's unwritten future, while he traced the spines of books, their leather-bound covers creased and worn as if they were old friends who had seen centuries pass within his own grasp. The air was thick with a scent that spoke to Mattia, a blend of musk from vellum pages, mixed subtly with dust motes dancing in the golden beams filtering through stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns on marble floors polished by time itself yet tinged ever so slightly yellow. Matteo felt an odd comfort here within these walls that had seen scholars and dreamers alike seek solace under its arches. He knew this was a place where history whispered secrets to those willing to listen, if only in their minds as they delved into the past through written word. But today's visit felt different, a premonition of things yet unseen or read between lines that stretched beyond time and space lay heavy on his heart. He had promised himself this pilgrimage for reasons not entirely clear to him, though surely it was tied with Alara in some arcane way across the temporal divide. It was then as if a silent whisper from an unknown voice called out within Matteo's mind, a soft prompt that led his gaze toward one book misplaced on a lower shelf by just happenstance, or perhaps cosmic design, for it seemed too deliberate to be mere coincidence. The cover bore no title, but rather depicted two figures intertwined in an embrace of light and shadow, an etching that held familiarity, even if not immediately recognizable at first glance. Stillness fell upon Matteo as he realized the book was a mirror image, save for one detail, where Alara's form radiated warmth beneath silk threads woven from moonlight itself. His pulse quickened at a mixture of anticipation and an inexplicable pull toward that which lay before him. Matteo reached out slowly with trembling fingers, feeling for the texture as if tracing invisible connections through time's fabric between himself and Alara he had once dreamt. As his hand finally closed around its cool leather exterior, a sensation of unseen strings tugging at that which seemed to be beyond physical touch yet palpably real in essence felt the weight on his shoulders ease, as if lifting years off him with every breath he drew within these hallowed walls. The moment was suspended when Matteo's eyes fell upon an inscription etched into the cover that read, "To my beloved Alara." The name itself seemed to pulse at his fingertips, a whispered echo of shared dreamscapes and silent conversations held within heartbeats synchronized across ages. His breath hitched as he realized this book might be their own testament or legacy left in the librarian's hand by Matteo himself years prior to his time-traveling awakening, perhaps. The realization dawned on him that every visit here felt like a step back into moments spent with Alara, each dream shared and memory cherished wove together as if they were fragments of an everlasting tapestry between souls. Matteo closed the book reverently after turning it over, feeling for any signal mark or symbol to guide him toward further understanding this connection across realms that had become a beacon within his life's journey since waking from Alara's embrace into time traveler, unknown even unto himself. Yet he sensed answers laying in wait, as if the universe itself sought resolution through its alignment of stars and fates. He sank onto an ancient reading chair beside this misplaced volume, allowing his thoughts to meander like rivers seeking their course back home within him after crossing vast oceans across epochs. Matteo knew now that he needed not only Alara's presence, but also the wisdom of time itself, stories penned by those who had lived before and lessons learned from lives past, if they could impart knowledge to one more humble soul than himself. As twilight approached within his mind's eye upon opening these pages, without flipping them through their binding, Matteo felt a tug toward the library entrance, their call he no longer questioned as it grew louder with each step. Matteo's journey had led him through time like threads pulled from a grand tapestry of history itself, a voyage that began with Elora and now beckoned toward an even more enigmatic destination, the Library of Babel, as prophesied in Borgesian law. As he stood at the threshold of this repository of all knowledge, his heart raced not just against time, but also for what lay beyond these walls, or place where answers might lie dormant within tomes that whispered secrets when opened to their core pages. The air here carried a weightlessness, as if he were already inside the vast expanse of this infinite library, rows upon endless shelves stretching out like cosmic spirals, inviting him onward and inward through space-time itself, for place where every book could be both everything and nothing at all. The silence here was a canvas for his thoughts to paint their own stories. Each one carried the wisdom of ages, yet Matteo felt as though he had not wandered these halls before. The labyrinthine shelves were lined with books that spoke in tongues unrecognizable and tales too vast for any single mind to comprehend, at once a cacophony of knowledge waiting just beyond understanding's reach. His fingers trailed along the leather spines, feeling as if he could sense their contents by touch alone. Each book pulsed with a history that hummed its own resonant frequency within his very soul. As Matteo delved deeper into this boundless sanctuary of learning and reflection, it became clear to him how little time had passed since Elora's departure. He felt as though the library was not just an escape from her, but also a journey back through their own shared histories. The books here were more than mere paper. They contained moments that Matteo could almost touch and feel, scenes of lives lived long before his existence, intertwined with hers across time's tapestry, and experience so personal it felt as if he might lose himself to the stories within their pages forevermore. He had often wondered about Elora's fate after her departure from this timeline. Here, in a dusty corner of an infinitely expanding library, Matteo found answers that stretched beyond time and even into dimensions yet unexplored by his traveler's heart. Answers he sought not just for himself, but as echoes to the shared dream with Elora. The books seemed almost sentient here. Their pages turned themselves in a dance of chance upon being opened, each one an enigma that promised knowledge and revelation, if only Matteo could interpret its cryptic symbols correctly. Or challenge he accepted without hesitation for love's sake alone. A particular volume caught his eye, bound not by leather, but materials unknown to any craftsmanship of the world, shimmering with an ethereal light that seemed too beautiful or false to be real. As Matteo reached out and turned its cover, an act as simple yet profoundly significant in this library as a handshake between old friends across eons, felt not just his fingers brushing against the pages, but also touching epochs of history, each one imparting upon him their essence through words penned by hands long returned to dust. These books did more than tell tales. They offered glimpses into what might have been or could yet come, a repository for all human potential and experience, where the past was not gone but lived on, breathing once again in every sentence crafted with care before his very eyes. Matteo knew then that to understand time's true nature meant understanding this place of infinite knowledge and its ability to connect dots across history without ever seeing them laid out for him, or puzzle where the pieces were memories themselves, scattered through livid zero-best like stars in a night sky, unending yet familiar. The library became his sanctuary as much as it was an odyssey. Within these walls of endless stories and silent wisdoms that spoke louder than any voice could muster, lay the answers he had sought since Elora's disappearance, hidden not behind locked doors, but amidst a sea of bound paper. It wasn't just knowledge Matteo sought here. It was understanding in its purest form, comprehension beyond mere facts and dates that would allow him to grasp his place within time itself, a thread woven through the fabric of existence where he, too, had played a part, even as an unwitting traveler. As twilight descended on Matteo's mind, with each page turned without flipping them physically, due to some inexplicable enchantment that seemed intent upon him, or beckoning call, the library seemed to recognize Matteo's presence there, knowing that washed over the room like a gentle wave, lapping at his consciousness with every syllable he spoke aloud, without intention or desire for response, only as if these volumes were listening intimately and understanding him in their own way. It was here, amidst this timeless refuge, where Matteo found himself not just learning about history, but becoming intertwined within it an unspoken narrative that began to weave itself around his very essence with the soft, steady threads of revelation. With each book he touched and every word absorbed by an open heart, a clearer picture emerged. Matteo was no mere observer, but part of this intricate tapestry wherein knowledge transcended its role as simple information to become wisdom imparted through the souls that had shaped it across ages. The library's ambience deepened with his growing awareness, every shadow and light playing upon dusty tomes dancing in a way only understood by those who could truly see beyond sight or visual symphony, accompanying his intellectual odyssey through the annals of human endeavor that seemed to guide him towards an epiphany. It was here where Matteo encountered tales not just written, but lived experiences etched into existence in a manner more profound than any historian could chronicler, a place between worlds beyond time and space, yet intimately connected with every moment he had ever felt the rush of discovery or ached from loss. He learned about civilizations that rose to touch the skies only to crumble beneath their own aspirations, cities built by human hands now but whispers among these shelves. It was as if Matteo could feel history's pulse against his palms, a rhythm of birth and decay he had longed for since Alara vanished into the folds between pages. In this sacred silence, where eventide dared not interrupt with its relentless ticking, a profound understanding began to blossom within Matteo's mind like dawn chasing away night's last shadow, a recognition that he was but one link in an endless chain of seekers and dreamers. Every story held the reflection of another soul. Every word whispered from these pages bridged lives across epochs, connecting him with a lineage of thinkers who had shared this same thirst for knowledge beneath different stars, her kinship that transcended mere blood ties or common fate, to become a communion of spirits united in pursuit. As Matteo delved deeper into the heart of the library, he discovered not just stories but souls. It was as if each book contained life itself, and within him lay dormant empathy capable of awakening these silent voices that had once lied a resonance between kindred spirits across time. He felt Alora's presence here with every shared memory held in the palm of his hand, her laughter echoing softly as if she were right beside him at this very moment. Matteo understood now why he was drawn to these hallowed stacks. They called out not just for knowledge, but for connection. The library's secrets unfolded before Matteo like petals of a bloom unfurling under the first light, revealing patterns that only made sense when seen from above or within their totality. Understanding time's true nature was to see with eyes beyond sight, to perceive continuity in disarray and order amidst chaos. It became apparent why Matteo had been chosen for this journey through history's labyrinthine hallways, as if he were destined by the fates themselves, or perhaps simply because his heart beat attuned to its rhythm or harmonious frequency that allowed him passage where others might falter. As night fell upon Matteo's world outside these walls and within them grew ever more vibrant, a pathway illuminated by the flicker of candlelight revealed itself before his eyes. He was no longer merely seeking answers, but rather experiencing an awakening, an epiphany that transcended intellect into something ethereal. The library had always been as Matteo stood in a secluded corner of the library, where dust motes danced like tiny spectres in shafts of light. He felt an unexplained sense of solace here among rows upon endless rows of ancient tomes and yellowed pages, or sanctuary for his soul. His journey had led him through time itself to this very moment. Each page turned was a step further back into the past, where history whispered its secrets, soft as leaves in an autumn breeze. He traced faded titles etched on leather-bound spines with quivering fingers that ached from his adventures through time's tangled web. The library seemed to breathe around him, its essence melding past and present, a timeless realm where Matteo could commune directly with history's architects of thought and change. In one particular book, he found the chronicles of an obscure poet from medieval times who had penned verses about love that transcended time, or sonnet to Alara, whose essence now seemed almost tangible in these sacred halls where thoughts were immortalized on paper. With each word Matteo read, his heart resonated with the poet's own yearning for a connection across centuries. He felt less alone, as if they shared an unbreakable thread woven through their spirits, or kindred spirit from history, who understood that love was not bound by mere time, but rather endured within memories and stories. Matteo found himself drawn to the library's oldest section, where a tattered ledger lay open on its wooden stand before him like an invitation through ages past. It contained meticulously recorded histories of societies that had risen and fallen, or testament to human endeavor. He delved into tales not just as spectator, but active participant in the epochs he witnessed, learning from their triumphs and follies alike, understanding better his own place within history's great tapestry. As twilight began its creeping descent upon the library's exterior world, with darkness steadily encroaching on Matteo's personal reality outside these walls, a singular book beckoned him from an otherwise unremarkable shelf, its cover adorned with celestial patterns that seemed to align in his mind like constellations of knowledge. This was not just any tome. It held secrets about the cosmos and humanity's place within its unfathomable depths, revealing mysteries where science met spiritualism, idea that there might exist a larger pattern or design at play beyond mere happenstance in life's unfolding. Within this book, Matteo discovered writings of great astronomers and philosophers who sought to comprehend the universe's workings not just through observation, but within broader contextual frameworks that hinted at a symbiotic relationship between human consciousness and cosmic forces. He felt his own thoughts intertwining with their musings, as if by opening this book of stars, Matteo was simultaneously unraveling the complexities of existence itself. And came an evening when time seemed to fold upon itself in a rare convergence, a moment where past and future met within these hallowed walls, while he sat absorbed with texts on ancient civilizations that had once flourished under stars now obscured by modern light pollution, their understanding of astronomy deeply intertwined with spirituality. He read accounts not as mere history but felt them. They seemed to pulse through his veins like lifeblood from ages long gone, a shared human experience transcending the constraints of chronology and geography that typically partitioned cultures across time zones on Earth's surface alone. On night after night, Matteo journeyed deeper into this cosmos within books where thoughts mingled with stardust. He became a scholar not just in historical fact, but also philosophical inquiry, a seeker of truth both empirical and existential that transcended the mere accumulation of knowledge. It was here among these chronicles, under flickering candlelights whose shadows danced upon walls lined with wisdom from ages past, where Matteo found an understanding far greater than any individual could possess, or shared human heritage etched into every page and whispered through time's echo. As if guided by the unseen hand of destiny, or perhaps a mutual heartbeat in sync with history's cadence, he was led to discover an ancient manuscript buried beneath layers of dust within one particularly forgotten nook or diary penned during times when empires clashed under the banner of gods and humanity's fate hung precariously on divine amidst flickering candlelight that cast dancing shadows upon walls lined with wisdom from ages past. Matteo absorbed alias, reflections on celestial events. He had witnessed said tales of comets and eclipses where the firmament seemed to speak directly to mortals. The diary entries spoke not only of astronomical phenomena, but also of their profound impacts upon society's belief systems, mythologies being born from these cosmic dances which guided destinies within alias world, as they did in Matteo's centuries later timeless conversation between the heavens and humankind. As he read on through entries marked with detailed astrolabe sketches etched alongside philosophical musings, a kinship blossomed within him, for just like Aelius Magnus before him who sought understanding in divine portents to navigate life's uncertain waters, Matteo too found solace and direction amidst the mysteries of existence. The diary revealed that even then, humans reached out into the night sky with hopes tethered by faith or shared human experience transcending constraints of chronology or geography. A universal quest for meaning etched in every soul's heart as surely today as it had been 2 millennia ago. Matteo sat back on his heels, eyes closed to savor the words that resonated within him, or symphony played out across ages by countless souls who sought communion with their cosmos and each other in darkness lit only by distant suns or brightening moons. The diary's last entry was a poignant reflection on humanity's enduring quest for connection, the yearning to feel part of something greater than oneself, for sentiment Matteo felt surging through his own veins as he connected with Aelius Magnus across time and space. The ancient script whispered secrets that only those who looked upwards could hear. That which binds us is not just the shared blood within our bodies, but also a collective yearning to understand, explore, and feel part of something eternal, a thread woven through humanity's history with stars as witnesses. The manuscript was more than text. It pulsed like lifeblood from ages long gone into Matteo's very being, because he read not just accounts, but lived them within the bound pages before him, feeling an invisible hand of destiny guiding his journey through time's echo with every turn of a page. On night after night, under these same flickering candles that once had illuminated Aelius, study as well a scholar and seeker amidst civil unrest, where divine intervention was believed to sway the tides in favor or ruin for city-states on earth's surface alone. Matteo pondered how much humanity might have changed, yet fundamentally not at all. Their understanding of astronomy, deeply entwined with spirituality and cosmic significance, remained a constant across a racer testament to the timelessness of human curiosity that had no regard for modern light pollution. He realized then just how fortunate he was, in this quiet room surrounded by leather-bound books heavy with wisdom from times gone, but never forgotten. His spirit felt lifted and connected not only through time, but across the vast distances between cultures, where thoughts mingled like stardust or shared human heritage that had transcended barriers of understanding. As he closed the diary, Matteo's heart was full with gratitude for having been guided to this discovery by an unseen hand, or perhaps a mutual heartbeat, in sync with history's cadence, their personal encounter within his scholarly journey that had transported him deeper into himself as much as it did through the centuries. The ancient manuscript, now safely tucked away and promising further revelations of humanity's cosmic dialogues past and present, held stories not just from Aelius Magnus, but also Matteo's own soul, an unending narrative where he was a vital character in an ever-unfolding tale. With a diary safely secured within his satchel alongside other tomes that had shaped civilizations, through as Matteo gently closed his diary and its leather cover gave a soft sigh of contentment beneath his touch, he felt an inexplicable connection to Aelius Magnus, or bond that transcended mere scholarly pursuit. The manuscript had spoken. It whispered secrets from the heart through time's veil directly into Matteo's spirit, as if guided by a benevolent muse of history itself, or perhaps merely his own subconscious mind working in tandem with the echoes of the past. The following morning, under an azure sky pierced only by wisps of cotton candy clouds, and speckled intermittently by sunbeams that seemed to dance like sprites upon dust motes, Matteo found himself drawn once again into his study, a room where time folded in on itself. It was as though the quiet hum of history beckoned him back here after midnight's revelations and discoveries had unfolded within its walls. It felt natural to continue this journey through epochs, delving deeper into a particular passage that Aelius Magnus had penned so earnestly about celestial navigation. This chapter would explore the ancient mariner's reliance on stars as he charted courses across boundless oceans, a poignant reminder of humanity's perpetual quest to understand our place beneath heaven's gaze and navigate not only physical waters, but also uncharted territories within ourselves. The ancient mariners were a people steeped in the knowledge that their fates could be guided by stars, just as Matteo's heart felt now under Aelius Magnus' watchful ire guide through time and thought. The manuscript spoke of Polaris, always steady amidst celestial whirls. It was a star around which tales wove themselves like threads in the fabric of history itself, stories that spanned cultures from Egyptian sailors to Viking explorers who braved icy fjords under northern lights. Matteo traced his finger along an intricate map, depicted not with lines but stars and symbols within Aelius Magnus' diary entry. It was a testament to the unity of human experience beneath shared skies, where no man could claim dominion over knowledge or time itself, or canvas painted by countless hands throughout history. In his mind's eye, he saw seas reflecting starlight that whispered secrets in languages long forgotten and yet ever present within our collective soul. An astral language understood not through words, but felt deepest when one listened with the heart rather than ears alone. He closed Aelius Magnus' account on a note of reverence, his thoughts adrift upon waves that carried him back to Rome's grandeur and wisdom encapsulated within its forums, where philosophers like Pliny might have debated not only politics, but the ethereal dialogue between humanity and cosmos. The ancient thinker's words still resonate today, reminding Matteo of an age where stars were divine messengers rather than distant suns, celestial bodies that had guided travelers to new worlds within themselves through mythology as much as they did across the seas and desert sands. Alias Magnus. Musings on constellations served not only as a reminder of humanity's search for direction, but also our innate need to find patterns in chaos or universal storytelling that spanned continents, where oral traditions birthed legends like Andromeda and Orion, whose tales traversed time much like the constellations themselves. Matteo's heart ached with a sense of shared humanity as he continued to read about how navigators used simple tools in harmony with these celestial beings, the astrolabe for measuring angles and altitudes, an ancient precursor to modern-day instruments that still guide ships today. He marveled at the interconnectedness between skyward gaze and seaward journey. This symbiosis was as much about exploring unknown lands on Earth's surface as it was understanding our internal landscapes or voyage across oceans, mirrored by introspective voyages into uncharted territories of consciousness. In the quiet hours before dawn, Matteo's study resonated with more than just whispers from pages old. He could feel a presence in his midst as if Alias Magnus were there beside him, or silent companion who had once sought answers within these very walls, surrounded by scrolls and tomes. The scholar realized that the manuscript was not merely about celestial navigation, but also an invitation to navigate through history itself, where Matteo couldn't help but feel a kinship as he imagined himself standing on the deck of an ancient vessel, stars his only compass and astrolabes at hand for their sacred duty. These navigators had looked to celestial bodies not just in moments when they were lost or seeking direction, as Matteo often did with history's enigmatic events that seemed so distant yet hauntingly familiar, but as a source of meaning, an anchor amidst the sea's capricious mood. The astrolabe had served them faithfully in these endeavors, its bronze rings and movable pointers echoing Matteo's own search for understanding within his scholarly haven. As he delved deeper into a chapter from Ptolemy, the lines between epochs blurred further still. He read of how astrolabes were not merely tools, but symbols, stars themselves, guiding explorers to new worlds and insights alike. Their constellations like stories told in light across ages, where each star held a place within our shared mythology, connecting us all beneath the same sky we now sought solace under. In these quiet hours before dawn's first blush touched his study's windowsill, Matteo felt as though he was standing shoulder to shoulder with those ancient mariners and scholars who had come searching for answers in much the same way that Alias Magnus once did, seeking truth within these very walls, surrounded by scrolls containing wisdom of eons past. It seemed an invisible thread wove through time, binding Matteo to his predecessors, like roots beneath old oaks, their spirits resonating with him in shared silence and reverence for knowledge preserved against the ravages of relentless years. The manuscript before him whispered secrets from a bygone era when scholars did not simply record history, but lived through it, her vibrant, unfolding tapestry that they both observed with wonderment and became themselves upon its wefts and warps. Matteo absorbed tales of celestial navigation as if the very air in his study had been imbued by those who once looked to stars for guidance across treacherous waters. Their voices carried on a breeze that seemed almost tangible, touching him with warmth he felt deep within core. As Matteo closed Ptolemy's pages and set them aside gently as one might return an old friend from company spent together in dreamlike communion, his mind continued to meander through history's hallways, where knowledge was both the key that unlocked understanding of our present selves, yet also a beacon towards future horizons. The astrolabe lay open on Matteo's lap, its bronzed form cool and solid under fingertips, as if inviting continuation in an ancient dance between seeker, starry heavens above, earthly shores below, past and present intermingling to chart courses through human experience. It was then that the book on celestial navigation beckoned him once more. Its spine cracked softly as if breaking open at long last, like a cosmic egg from which history's secrets emerged in slow-moving revelation, each page turn revealing tales of exploration not just across oceans but within the recesses of humankind's spirit. Matteo could feel his journey through time spiraling outward like ripples upon water, or perhaps echoed by distant starlight itself as it traversed light years, to touch him here and now in Italy's twilight-shrouded study room, where the past lay waiting patiently for those who seek its counsel. The manuscript seemed alive with stories of brave souls whose names were etched across not just maps, but also history's grand narrative, their shared odyssey inked into being as the astrolabe, his constant companion through the exploration of past and present, lay beside him on a weathered oak desk. Its bronzed form cool against his skin suggested it too had stories to tell, stories that were not just about navigating by stars, but understanding humankind's intrinsic desire for discovery. As Matteo's gaze lifted from the astrolabe, he found himself captivated once more by a leather-bound tome titled The Celestial Guide to Navigators of Old. Its spine cracked softly, as if eager to divulge its secrets or sound so familiar yet comforting in this dimming study room. Matteo tenderly opened the book, each page turn revealing tales, not just across oceans, but within humanity's spirit itself. It was a reminder that though explorers sought new lands physically under celestial guidance, they were equally voyagers through their own souls and time's relentless flow. On the next page lay an illustration of ancient Greece civilization, where philosophy flourished in tandem with seafaring prowess. Matteo could almost hear Socrates debating virtue beside Odysseus, contemplating Ithaca's shores while plotting courses by constellations that had guided mariners for millennia before them. His thoughts meandered like the Tiber River through Rome as Matteo read about Julius Caesar's triumphant return to a grateful citizenry, his heart pounding with tales of ambition and power juxtaposition that made him reflect on how far humanity had come since those ancient times. The following pages unfolded stories from the Age of Discovery, where brave souls like Vasco da Gama sought not gold or conquest, but understanding, their astrolabes pointing towards horizons filled with new lands and cultures to learn a pursuit that seemed as much an inner journey within Matteo himself. As his eyes roamed the parchment's faded ink of explorers like Sir Francis Drake or Captain James Cook, he recognized a common thread binding their journeys, not just physical landscapes, but also personal transformations, or sense that every voyage taken was an extension and contribution to humanity's grand narrative. The book's next chapter took Matteo back in time even further to the Viking Age, where Norse explorers ventured forth into unclaimed territories, with nothing but stars as their guide or testament that seeking horizons was not solely a European endeavor nor confined by modern maps and technology. The astrolabe felt like an ancient friend in his lap now. Its presence reminded Matteo of the interconnectedness between all seekers across time, regardless of their era or origin or notion, that seemed to resonate within these very walls steeped in history's whispers and echoes. As night deepened outside with stars twinkling through his window, as if acknowledging Matteo's thoughts on exploration, he continued reading about the age of sail, when tall ships cut through waves under full sail, time where sailors relied heavily upon their astrolabes to navigate by celestial bodies. The stories took him next along with Magellan and his crew as they embarked on a journey that would circle back westward, proving Earth's roundness, while also showcasing humanity, inquisitiveness, or voyage born of the same curiosity Matteo felt stirring within himself. Upon turning the page to tales from Asia and South America during colonial expeditions, he saw a reflection in his own life, not just as one who sought knowledge, but someone whose heart beat with empathy for those cultures that had also been explored, or humility born of understanding their histories, were equally written within these books. Matteo's hands glided to the tales from Africa, where powerful kingdoms like Marley and Songhai flourished long before European maps included African coastlines. He read about Mansur Muser's pill in chapter 26, as Matteo's eyes traced over the vivid illustrations of African kingdoms that had thrived beneath a different starry sky from his own home continent. He felt an even deeper connection to these stories or shared humanity across disparate cultures and geographies. It was in this chapter where Matteo found himself transported back through time, not just by the tales themselves, but also as they intertwined with a personal journey of discovery that had been unfolding before him for months, if not years. The pages described grand cities bustling under Mansur Muser's rule during his pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324, an African sovereign who was said to have made such an abundance of gold from Marley that it caused a temporary devaluation when he visited the holy city. Matteo could almost hear the clinking coins and smell the rich scents wafting through the air as Mansur Muser passed by. His generosity spread far beyond material wealth, for with every act of charity came knowledge about distant lands to those who would list in knowledge that echoed Matteo's yearning. As night gave way to dawn, and he closed yet another book under the soft glow of candlelight, a sense of kinship washed over him as if each story had been imbued with life by his own breathing heartbeat within these pages or symphony only history could compose. Matteo's fingers paused for but an instant on the final words. He read about Manser Muser before they landed gently upon a blank page, inviting him to fill it with thoughts and dreams of tomorrow's explorations yet unwritten. His mind began weaving threads from different eras, connecting dots between past adventurers' footsteps across oceans and the silent journeys he himself had embarked upon within these very walls, seeking not only knowledge, but understanding of a world where his voice could have been heard. Matteo whispered to no one in particular about dreams too grand for this age of sailing ships that carried more than mere goods on their decks. They bore the weight and wonder of human curiosity across unfathomable distances, all while sharing stories at night by lantern light under foreign stars, alongside captains who dared defy boundaries. These dreams heaved themselves into reality as Matteo set his sights not just on distant shores, but also within the heart and mind where empathetic bridges spanned cultural divides, where understanding could be cultivated like the most precious of crops in a land far from home. And with each tale that had begun under Nighttime's watchful eye through his window pane, he learned not just about other people, but also unearthed truths buried deep within himself. For history was more than mere dates and events. It echoed the heartbeats of those who lived it as much as Matteo did in these quiet moments, surrounded by silent companions that only words could summon. As morning light crept into his study, its fingers spread warmth across every surface touched by time's passage. He felt a renewed sense of purpose for the journey ahead, not just to discover worlds within pages, but also in flesh and blood cultures whose histories were as richly woven through with human experience. Matteo knew now that his quest was no longer confined to solitary nighttime readings, nor even solely academic pursuits. It had become a pilgrimage of the spirit of voyage, where every heartbeat carried him closer not just across continents, but within them as well. And with this chapter's end came an understanding that his own story was being written in tandem with those he read about, each sentence penned by experiences and reflections gained through tales of old, that the very act of seeking knowledge had become a formative part of him just as much as it had been for all who sought to understand before him. Matteo closed his book gently on its lap, feeling lighter somehow with thoughts untangled from ancient threads and woven into a new within himself, a tapestry that spanned centuries yet was entirely unique to the very moment of this sleepy night's closing chapter. With the sunrise painting golden hues across his spine, Matteo knew it would be time soon to step out into a world where he could put theory and narrative into practice, a real-world odyssey in pursuit of cultural understanding directly inspired by tales from ancient scrolls and dusty books. He had planned this pilgrimage with meticulous care, yet the thought that his quest was intertwined not just with other scholars, but also through a personal narrative felt like an affirmation he needed to embrace fully as each heartbeat echoed into another timeline of shared human experience. The previous chapter had been about Matteo's internal transformation or journey from the confines of his study towards embracing historical cultures firsthand, and now this morning found him standing at a crossroads between theory and practice. He felt lighter as thoughts untangled themselves like threads shed by an old tapestry, to be woven into something new within himself, a personal narrative spanning centuries yet unique to his current moment of awakening on that sleepy night's closing chapter, which now seemed even more potent with the promise of adventure ahead. The next step in Matteo's journey was set firmly before him as he packed a modest bag filled not just for travel, but also to capture moments and stories alike, a journal lined with blank pages promising new tales, a camera loaded for snapshots of life's rich tapestry. The first stop on his pilgrimage would be Rome, the city where history sleeps beneath cobblestone streets, just as Matteo had discovered countless times through words penned by those who came before him. Yet now he yearned to walk amidst its ancient echoes and live breaths of ages past. As his footsteps left familiar grounds, the rhythm began a cadence that felt like a heartbeat, harmonizing with centuries-old tales etched into every cornerstone in this grand city where gods once walked among mortals as equals. The tale wandered through piazzas and along ancient paths worn by countless feet before his, each step taking him closer to the world that had inspired so many stories, from which he drew inspiration for years. A pilgrimage of learning steeped in awe and zero. I'm sorry, but I can only provide one chapter at a time. Let's begin with chapter 27. As he approached St. Peter's Basilica with its colossal dome glistening like a jewel in Rome's diadem, Matteo paused at every step to listen. For this was not just any pilgrimage, it was an immersive voyage through centuries where each brick whispered secrets of the past. The famed Pieter by Michelangelo caught his eye next, and as he stood before it, a sense of reverence took hold within him. He traced gentle fingers over cool marble, feeling for just 1 second like time had stopped her pilgrimage, not only across space, but through epochs that shaped humanity's essence. The Tiber River lazily flowed beneath the bridge where Matteo's ancestors might have crossed a millennia ago. Its waters bore silent witness to Rome as both conqueror and cradle of civilization, empire builder yet home for artists, philosophers, poets. He watched seagulls ride thermal currents above bridges that once were arteries of commerce during the reign of emperors now long gone. A city where life moves in a constant flow as much within its veins and alleys as it does along those very waterscapes he walked beside with his sketchbook. Beneath Rome's gaze, Matteo found solace, even amidst the cacophony of tourists snapping pictures by ancient monuments or lovers carving initials into their own timeline on a modern landmark. Spectator delicate balance between preserving and evolving. His journal became his confidante, inked with sketches that captured not just scenes but the very soul of Rome. Every line drawn was an homage to stories etched deeply within its walls by those who had walked here before him through countless generations. In a quiet piazza shadowed by time-worn buildings, Matteo met Lorenzo, our historian, with eyes that mirrored his own passion for the past and heartstrings pulled tight from memories of Rome as he knew it centuries ago. They shared tales under an ancient olive tree whose roots held whispering histories just beneath its leaves, stories where gods played alongside mortals, love blossomed in piazzas now littered with tourists, cameras instead of poets' quills, and philosophers' debates that once echoed through these same spaces. Their conversation wove itself into the fabric of Matteo's experience, a tapestry richer than any he had found within books or lectures, imparting wisdom from a life lived amidst Rome's heartbeat rather than its dusty shelves and hallowed institutions. As night fell over this city that never truly sleeps beneath the watchful eyes of deities relegated to sculpture form in modern times, or not perhaps at humanity's continued reverence for their mythic origins, Matteo felt an undeniable kinship with those who walked these paths before him. Under moonlight, he strolled through Campo de' Fiori, where merchants hawked not just goods, but tales of olives and wine that had fed the city's denizens since antiquity, or living museum under a Celeste Zero, to clarify further details for chapter 28. The chapter should follow Matteo as he continues his journey through Rome, engaging with locals to learn about life in modern-day Italy. The story will focus on the contrasts and continuities between ancient Roman traditions and contemporary practices that still echo those of old times, how local artisans weave history into their crafts, or how family recipes passed down generations maintain a link to Rome's culinary past, all while navigating through bustling streets lined with cafes serving espresso as the new age version of ancient Roman libation. The chapter will also explore Matteo's interaction with an elderly local who imparts stories about his grandparents living in Rome during World War II, revealing personal and collective memories that stand testament to resilience. As Matteo ventured deeper into Rome's heart on that crisp autumn evening, he found himself at a cobbled street fair where artisans displayed their craftsmanship with pride and skill reminiscent of ancient Roman gilders. Intricate mosaics adorned tables as vendors sold handcrafted items passed down through generations, or thread woven seamlessly into the fabric of modern life, honoring traditions that had stood for centuries. Sipping on a frothy cappuccino from one such vendor's cart, Matteo engaged in conversation with an elderly gentleman named Giovanni by his side, who wore his memories like badges upon his chest. The warmth of the espresso cup contrasted starkly against the cool night, as Giovanni recounted tales that stretched back to a time when Rome was cloaked not just in togas, but also under the shadow of war, where he and his grandparents survived by relying on their resilience. Giovanni's voice grew softer as he described how they would gather around an old radio set, that crackled with news from a far-out lifeline to a world beyond Rome's confines during the darkest days of World War II. The stories were heavy, burdened by memories of loss and hardship, but also glimmers of hope as neighbors supported each other through shared suffering and scarce joys such as homemade wine from their backyard vineyards, a remnant tradition that had survived the test of time. As Matteo listened, he felt an echo in his heart. Even though centuries have passed since then, these stories still resonated with a timeless truth about human spirit and connection to one's roots. The tales spoke volumes not just about war, but also how deeply intertwined life had always been within the cobbled streets of Rome, where every stone seemed imbued with history that pulsed beneath his feet, reverberating through generations in Giovanni's voice. Their conversation turned to family recipes and healings passed down like precious scrolls safeguarded by time itself. Each ingredient was a note on the stave of tradition, an ancient melody that continued its timeless refrain across ovens and hearths in homes far removed from where Giovanni's parents had once lived. Matteo understood now more than ever how his own family recipes for pasta, subtly changed with each iteration yet fundamentally unaltered since the days of old, were a testament to Rome's enduring culinary heritage that sustained him and countless others through every era's trials. The next morning found Matteo continuing his journey as he explored markets saturated with fresh produce and ode to ancient Roman agriculture, where the land still whispered of a time when its fruits were currency among citizens whose lives also danced in tandem with nature's rhythms. The market was alive with activity and energy that belied Rome's age-old reputation for being perpetually awake. Here, life surged forward as if racing against itself, a paradox that Matteo found both bewildering and enchanting. He paused in front of a stand where an elderly vendor meticulously prepared olive oil infused with herbs grown from the very same soil tilled by his ancestors eons ago, offering him samples as he savored each drop's complex flavor profile, or bridge across time on his palate that transported Matteo back to a world where every meal was an act of communion. The day waned, and the sun dipped below ancient spires when it fell upon Lucia, who had caught sight of him amidst her own search for remnants of history in Rome's bustling squares, a shared quest that began as a mere coincidence but evolved into an unforeseen kinship. She invited Matteo to join the family. She helped run at their home nestled between historic sites, where modern-day Romans and visitors alike could savor authentic cuisine rooted in recipes preserved by generations of her relatives, a living museum within a dwelling that itself bore witness to Rome's relentless evolution. As Matteo settled into the comfort of Lucia's home, he found himself wrapped not just in conversation, but also stories woven through shared meals and laughter under Roman skies kissed with stars unchanged since ancient times, his bedtime tales for today, a tapestry rich with past echoes. He drifted off to sleep beneath the watchful eyes of deities,